MLB DFS picks Tuesday, June 25th. Who are the pitchers we want to roster? Who are the pitchers we want to target with our stacks? We're going to sort based on xFIP. And Bobby Miller coming in at number one despite having a 5.40 ERA. Do we like Bobby Miller? Yes. Dodgers number 2 prospect. Sure, limited sample size, just 11 innings pitched, and it hasn't been that great for him, but he's doing some things really well. Obviously, the home runs are a bit of a problem with 25% home run to fly ball rate, 1.5 home runs per 9, and that's slightly inflated because he did pitch in Coors, and he faced Minnesota, another good offense, and he faced Chicago, and in that game, Chicago had a 600 BABIP. He's been unlucky for the most part. One of the things that we really love about Bobby Miller, 13.9 Ks per 9 in the limited sample size. Oh, by the way, he's facing Chicago. So a great matchup. Sure, if we're talking about home runs and White Sox play in a homer-friendly ballpark, that is a concern. But this really could be the night that we see Bobby Miller live up to his prospect status. Ranger not on the slate. Tariq not on the slate. Mackenzie Gore, number 4 prospect for Washington. A lot of good young arms with the Nationals. The matchup. The Padres are hitting pretty well of late, but they're not really hitting left-handed pitching. Fernando Tatis, back in the lineup, has been great against lefties over his career. He's ice cold this year. So there is an opportunity here, and Gore, part of that young, solid rotation for the Nationals, striking batters out, still with a huge BABIP. Really, really unfortunate. Like, this should get a lot better. And even with his bad luck, which we'll explain in a second, 3.24 ERA, 3.26 xFIP. And as a fly ball pitcher, his BABIP should be a lot lower. It should regress. Fewer balls are going to fall into play. I could easily see in a month or two his numbers being really strong. I know the Padres are hotter of late, but they're not hitting left-handed pitching. Joe Ryan's fine. I just don't know if I want to pay for Joe Ryan, whatever he's going to end up being. These salaries are projections, by the way. I should probably just go ahead and hide them. I'll leave them up there, whatever. He's doing everything he needs to do. No real concerns. 3.24 ERA. It's got the xFIP. I just don't know if I really want to target Arizona, who are decent against right-handed pitching. I wouldn't completely eliminate it, but it's not like, oh, this is the guy that I've got to play. Galsman, this will be a back-to-back. He just faced Boston Red Sox recently. 5 innings pitched, 4 runs, 4 strikeouts. Looks like a place where you could stack Boston, or at least consider Boston. His home run rate, just 1.1 home runs per 9, but it has been worse of late. He is struggling to strand runners. The xFIP says, oh, he's been better, whatever, but I don't like him in this matchup. And if I'm looking lefty versus righty, left-handed bats, so Galsman's allowing a 367 WOBA, 1.4 home runs per 9, pretty high hard contact. That's where you would go in that situation. Brandon Pfaadt. 2 ways to look at this. We like Minnesota. They're hitting really well. They're hot. They hit right-handed pitching. And Brandon Pfaadt, number 2 prospect for the Diamondbacks, pretty good as a young arm. He's slowly developing. He's not elite. This is not Paul Skeens, but he's getting there. And next year, he'll probably be one of the guys that we talk a lot about. He's growing. He's developing. Pretty strong numbers, though. 9 Ks per 9. Lower walk rate. Could do better at stranding runners. Could possibly get a little bit more ground balls, but ultimately 357 xFIP. Now, I don't really want to tangle with Minnesota. And I have no problem taking the Minnesota Bats. But here's the thing. You look at Fat and how he struggles, it's really against left-handed bats. 358 WOBA, 1.3 home runs per 9. He can't strike them out. He's walking too many of them. He's been pretty strong against right-handed hitters. And the Minnesota lineup is filled mainly with right-handed hitters. So I don't mind whichever way you want to go, but Fat could be an interesting play in this specific matchup, considering he's pretty good against righties. So don't rule that out. I think he'll go underowned. I don't know how deep people are going to dive into the stats, but keep that in mind. Hunter Brown, as we've talked about on this podcast several times before, eventually his numbers or his true numbers would show in the results. 5 ERA, but a 358 xFIP. He can strike out some batters. He was just getting killed by home runs. He's getting killed by a high BABIP, which we would expect a slightly higher BABIP from a ground ball pitcher. And they can go through their troubles. And not getting out of jams with the 72% strand rate will get there. But one would expect that he would get a little bit better at getting out of jams. He would get a little bit more fortunate. And getting a lot of ground balls and striking out a lot of batters. What more could you honestly ask for? It is really a perfect mix. Limiting fly balls and K-ing people, that's great. And that's what we've seen. He's pretty much been on fire. Over his last 3 starts, he's only allowed 1 run. Now, the matchups haven't been that tough. But guess what, folks? The matchup isn't tough here either. Colorado can't hit. Now, you could freak out, oh, Colorado, 220 ISO over the last week. Yeah, if you watch those Coors series, the ball is flying out. These are the definition of inflated stats. 341 WOBA over the last week. That's right. Colorado was crushing the ball at Coors Field. But on the season, they're not hitting. And we know that when Colorado leaves Colorado, their numbers plummet. Hunter Brown, huge green light. You love it. Ronaldo Lopez, I don't know if I want to tangle with St. Louis. His numbers have been pretty good. He has not allowed a run in his last 2 starts. One was against Detroit, so we don't really put too much on that. But he did shut down Baltimore. Last start, no runs, 6 Ks. Again, I don't know if it's a priority to mess with St. Louis, which is hitting pretty well of late. But he's definitely on the board. Castillo, I believe, is not on the slate. Bello, in a back-to-back situation, just faced Toronto. He allowed 7 hits, 6 Ks, 2 earned runs. Can he replicate that? Or will Toronto be more familiar with him? We look and see wherever side you fall on. If you do think that it's not going to be his day, Bello, 378 WOBA to left-handed batters. 1.9 home runs per 9. Seems like you got a surefire bet of catching a home run from the Toronto left-handed hitters. I don't really see the upside in rostering him. Not on the slate. You returning from the IL. He was pretty good before going down with that groin injury. But I think it's probably a little too soon, a little too cute to go for it. Although the matchup isn't that terrible against Washington. Mitch Spence has been a pretty average rookie. The matchup is not terrible at all. The Angels aren't hitting, and they've been pretty cold of late. But overall, Mitch Spence just been okay. If you're trying to save, I don't mind it that much. It's there. Mitch Keller, back-to-back, just faced the Reds. And in that matchup, 7 innings pitched, no earned runs, 2 hits allowed, 7 strikeouts. Now, we do need to mention that matchup was in Pittsburgh. And it could go in the other direction. But overall, Mitch Spence, the numbers, pretty solid this season. Cincinnati is very mercurial in that they can be an absolute juggernaut on the base paths, at least. And there are quite a few times where they just go out there and strike out and are very unproductive. But at the same time, you're dealing with Great American Ballpark. I don't think I would want anything to do with that. I would just go ahead and play Cincinnati. And then we'll look at the splits and we'll see that Spence struggles a little bit more with right-hander batters, surprisingly. You would think the lefties would have stronger numbers. But by the way, he did just shut down the Reds, wherever it may have been. Lugo, quality pitcher for years, just never could quite stay healthy and get the innings. He is healthy. He is getting the innings. He's 10-2. I know wins aren't really the best measure of success, but if we want to win, the Royals at home versus Miami seems like a pretty good spot to get a win. Does he strike out a lot of batters? No, but he doesn't walk them. He doesn't give up home runs. And he's just a good pitcher. Stranding runners, 2.40 ERA, 3.92 xFIP, excellent ground ball pitcher. It's not flashy. It's not exciting. But again, Miami's not really a team that strikes out a lot. If we want a pitcher against Miami, we just want a guy who's going to be smart and let them get themselves out. And he can possibly go really deep into a game. And by going deeper into a game, maybe they do pick up more strikeouts than normal. So it's really an excellent spot for Lugo. Limiting hits. I mean, look at his last start. He did get 8 strikeouts. 6 hits over 6 innings. Very solid. Kyle Gibson is very similar to Lugo. 5-2 on the year. Eating up some innings. Not really striking out a lot. Walking a little bit more than we'd like. But again, a ground ball pitcher. 49% ground ball rate. I don't really want to go after Atlanta. I would much rather target Miami. But I mention this because maybe we're not stacking Atlanta, who has been hot of late. They do strike out, but he's not really a strikeout pitcher. But I will mention that Gibson is having a terrific season, and mainly because his sinker ball has been the best it has been in years. And we're deep enough into the season at this point that I think we can believe in that pitch. I don't think there's going to be regression. The BABIP might go up a little bit because he is a ground ball pitcher, but he really does seem in control. And on another day, I think Gibson comes more to life, when he faces Detroit or faces the Cubs. But Atlanta probably don't want to do that dance. Urban's not on the slate. Andrew Heaney, always a guy that we want to target. Fly ball pitcher. Gives up more than his fair share of home runs. It's going to be in a hitter's ballpark. 2-8 on the season. 4.19 ERA, 4.19 xFIP. The numbers don't lie. Fly ball pitcher. 1.4 home runs per 9. Milwaukee doesn't hit lefties that well, but I don't mind really going here. We look at the splits. Right-handed hitters against Heaney, 1.5 home runs per 9. That's where you would prefer to go. Although his xFIP to lefties is still 4.95. And I think a lot of that's because the strikeout to walk ratio. And that makes sense. Well, it doesn't. You figure he'd be a little bit. That's Andrew Heaney. He has had a good June. Now, let's talk about that good June. All right, you pitched well against Miami. Okay. You pitched well against Seattle. Okay. Now, I will compliment him, though. And this is relative to Andrew Heaney. We're not comparing him to Hunter Brown or any of the top pitchers on the slate. The expectations are much lower. But he exceeded expectations against San Francisco, which is a good team against left-handed pitchers. And the Mets have been good against left-handed pitchers. So, if you wanted to talk yourself out of Milwaukee, based on the fact that they're not really that great against lefties, and he's having a halfway decent month. You may not need to stack Milwaukee, but I think there's going to be a home run. So speaking of thinking there will be a home run, Hunter Green. You know you have tremendous K upside with Hunter Green. Just faced Pittsburgh, 9 Ks, no earned runs, only 2 hits in 6 innings. We do always have to make a note that Hunter Green is much better on the road, and that's mainly because in more pitcher-friendly ballparks, he doesn't get stung by that bleeder that falls over the wall or even a moonshot. Fewer home runs. So Hunter Green at Cincinnati is always going to be a concern and a worry in the small ballpark. But he does always have the high strikeout upside, which he demonstrated in his last outing against Pittsburgh. So I don't mind going out of the way. If we do want to target Hunter Green, you're going to look at the right-handed bats, which might seem a little strange, but that's the way that it works. 1.1 home runs per 9, 4.53 xFIP. I wouldn't stack Pittsburgh, but you could look at the bats. And I also don't have a problem playing Hunter Green and going with the strikeouts in a matchup against a Pittsburgh team that strikes out 25% of the time. With this big of a slate, I don't think you're going to play both. But they're definitely considerations on the board. Kyle Hendricks, this is another back-to-back. He just faced San Francisco, and it was actually the best game of his season. 5 innings pitched, 8 strikeouts, just 2 hits, 1 earned run. But other than that, he has not been a good pitcher. 2.2 home runs per 9. Does not strand runners. 8.20 ERA. San Francisco not very good against right-handed pitching. The ballpark's not very good. They just got shut down by him. But I'll go with the larger sample size. And we have a pretty good notebook on Kyle Hendricks. You can target him and be fine. They don't have a lot of power, but then that's fine. He's a ground ball pitcher. You just need to bleed him to death because he's pitching to contact. He's not striking anyone out. Don't need to explain Austin Gomber. You always target Austin Gomber, and you've got an awesome offense in Houston. Logan Allen, the lefty versus Baltimore. Talked about this before. It's the beginning of the season. One of the concerns. Baltimore has a ton of left-handed bats. They did nothing to address that. They're going to struggle. And they actually did struggle the first month of the season. But then the lefties started hitting lefties. And we can see 180 ISO, 332 WOBA, 118 WRC+. They're hot. Although the ballpark is not statistically checking out as the most dynamic, we do know that Camden Yard is generally more favorable. Just one of the things that you run into with a smaller sample size of looking at seasonal data. Park's fine. So we look at Logan Allen, and right-handed hitters are giving him the most trouble, although he hasn't really been that great against left-handed hitters. 437 xFIP. We go back over to our numbers. 6.8 Ks, 3.2, walking too many batters, not getting out of jams, 5.46 ERA. xFIP's up, no problem. Bryce Wilson, young rookie pitcher, appears to be hitting a bit of a wall. Hasn't been that great over the last month or so. Just one good start. I believe that one good start was against Cincinnati. It's my team, if you have not noticed. So given that Wilson's not pitching that well, numbers aren't really that dynamic, and actually could be worse with 257 BABIP. 469 xFIP. I know Texas's offense is nothing to really write home about, and they are usually a team that we want to target. But given the choice between Bryce Wilson and Texas bats, I'm going to lean on Texas bats. You look at Wilson's last start, 5 earned runs, 4 innings pitched. That's where I would go. Chris Flexen, surprisingly, has been good in 3 of his last 4 outings. He is, though, conceding home runs. Last game, 6 strikeouts, only 1 earned run. But that being said, it's the freaking Dodgers. I'll look at the larger sample size of who Flexen is, which is 6.8 Ks per 9, 3.5 walks. Fly ball pitcher, not stranding runners, 5.35 ERA. Look, 4.88 XP. Yeah, he's pitched well of late. But that probably is going to come to an end when he faces the Dodgers. David Peterson, we got a small sample size this year with just 16 innings pitched. You've probably played him in DFS a couple times. He's been solid outside of a tough matchup. But now he's going to get another tough matchup against the Yankees. You can go ahead and stack Yankees, play Yankees. This is not going to be a David Peterson day. Tyler Anderson, the walks are ridiculous. But the fact that he keeps getting away with it is absolutely amazing. 87 innings pitched, walking everyone, 2.58 ERA. Obviously, by walking too many and not striking anyone out, the xFIP's going to say, you suck. But Tyler Anderson continues to be a magician. 87% strand rate. The BABIP is 225. He just doesn't fit the mold of the analytics. At least that's what we're going to tell ourselves. Now, it could be like this is a ticking time bomb. You can't walk people, not strike people out, and just hope that the ball keeps finding gloves. And then you could argue, look, he's done it thus far. He knows what he's doing. He's in control. He has a plan. I hope so. But then again, it's 2.58 ERA this far in. Something's working. He's facing an Oakland team that's not good. Now, we'd like a strikeout pitcher against a strikeout team, but if there was a place where he could succeed, and he has demonstrated that he can succeed, it's definitely in this matchup. If you look at Tyler Anderson, over his last 7 starts, in 6 of them, he's allowed 1 earned run or less, or fewer. He's in control, folks. And one of the big problems that we just talked about was that he walks too many batters. Well, guess what? Oakland versus left-handed pitching, just 22nd in walks, which should be obvious. The fact that they strike out a lot, they don't walk much either. Yeah, Tyler Anderson's fine. Maybe scary because of analytics, but whatever. Yanni Chirinos, reliever for the Rays. Found his way to the Marlins. Found his way to the Marlins minor league team. He was decent, though, in the minors this year. Got called up last week. Jumped into a game, 5 innings pitched. 6 Ks, 2 earned runs. Cool story, bro. I'm not rostering against Kansas City. Garrett Cole against the Mets. Garrett was okay his first outing. 4 innings, 5 Ks. 2 earned runs. Seemed pretty stretched out. I can't remember how many pitches he got. 70, 80 pitches. Probably going to go a little bit deeper against the Mets. But man, the Mets are hot. I don't think I need to go there. I'm sure people are going to rush to the Cole window and jump in early, and maybe I'll be late to the train. That is fine by me. All right, thanks for joining me. I hope that you have a good Tuesday night. Please share these videos with other people. Like, subscribe, recruit people over. Hopefully this is helpful data. The spreadsheet is free. Not this specific one, the other one, but it's still the same data. I might share this one too. It's in the description below. Thanks, guys. Trip to Life Fantastic.